Once upon a time, France was the envy of many countries. The people lived comfortably, the economy was booming amid a global recession, and tourists from around the world flocked to the country. Unfortunately, things have changed. Inflation is soaring, and the government struggles to keep its head above the water. The condition is so dire that about half the population can't save a penny. As if that's not all, the energy, transportation, and food sectors face major difficulties. It's like everything is going worse in this once perfect state. Poverty was far-fetched, but it is now true for many French citizens. Maybe you don't understand how deep the economic downturn in France is, but you soon will. In today's video, we explore the depth of the issues, especially with regard to poverty, the housing crisis, and rising cost of food. So, buckle up, because it's about to be an adventurous ride. France may be one of the most popular tourist destinations, but not everyone here lives a picture-perfect life. A whopping 9 million people, about 14% of its population, live below the poverty line. Even if you're lucky not to fall under this category, the chances of falling into this financial quicksand are high. And if you ask why, the answer is obvious. France's unemployment rate has hovered around 10% in the past few years. Only recently did it drop to 7.2%. But let's compare notes. This figure is outrageous compared to countries like the UK with around 4.3%. Even more devastating is that the country's youth unemployment is around 16%, meaning that almost 1 in 5 young people are unemployed. Of the adults living below the poverty line, the unemployed are the worst hit because no steady job means no steady income. On the brighter side, there are fewer impoverished elderly folks in France compared to the European Union average. At least, the grandmas and pas can enjoy old age in peace. The decline of industry in France is another leading contributor to poverty. As we speak, Robox, a mill town on the border with Belgium, has a poverty rate of 46%. After World War II, foreign workers migrated to France to work in the mills. But here's the catch. These workers and the kids they birthed were untrained. Fast forward to today, these mills no longer exist, and the migrants are unskilled to take up more higher-paying jobs. This may not be the direct cause of poverty across the country, so you have a population that thinks it's easy to get unemployment benefits. Why do they have to struggle to get jobs? It turns out that getting unemployment benefits is not as easy as it sounds. More than half of the unemployed population rarely get those benefits because they're missing out on some bureaucratic paperwork. Just when we thought it couldn't get crazier, industrial production is at an all-time low. We're talking about job losses running into the millions. Why is this happening? At the start of the year, many French citizens hoped for brighter days ahead. But then protests across the country changed the focus faster than you can say baguette. These violent demonstrations on the streets of France suggested that the country needed to be de-civilized. But beyond this problem is the issue of deindustrialization. It's no secret that industries and industrial jobs are slowly phasing out in the French economy. This trend leads to a declining share and a reduced gross domestic product. Over the last 3 decades, over 2 million people have lost industrial jobs, and the manufacturing sector barely contributes 10% of the country's GDP. If you compare this with industrial neighbors, you'll find that the French economy is lagging. Falls are common among global economies, yet Germany still maintains a solid 18.5%. Deindustrialization is a turnoff for any economy because it's destructive. Not only is the industrial sector affected, territories and jobs are lost. It also weakens GDP per capita growth. Most societies compensate for this decline with increased taxes, public spending, and a little debt magic. But this has proved to be ineffective in the long run. Now, let's dive into some chilling statistics. Manufacturing output fell in January by 1.8%, compared to a 0.2% rise in December. For the industry as a whole, the fall was 1.9% compared to 1.5% the previous month. This fall is thanks to the manufacture of transport equipment, which dropped to 6.7%. What's even scarier is that the production of automobiles decreased by 2.6%, while those of transport equipment fell by 9.5%. So, why the decline? Well, blame it on the growing share of emerging economies and exports, especially China. The stakes are higher than ever. While other advanced economies are affected by this shift, France has lost more market share than the major Eurozone partners. Although industrialization is not the only path to economic growth, it is a potential source of rapid growth. Notice how the UK, US, and Germany grew rapidly between the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries thanks to industrialization. Thankfully, the French government has enacted several laws to reverse the negative trends. In 2021, it introduced a 5-year, €54 billion France 2030 investment plan to boost the economy and support innovative technologies. Macron even promised to decrease the time required to secure an industrial permit from 18 to 9 months. Delays pose severe problems for potential investors in the country. The bureaucratic hurdles encourage them to look elsewhere, like in Germany, where there are no administrative delays. And with that, we've come to the topic of limited housing options for vulnerable people. The housing crisis in France may not be as wild as those in Romania and Bulgaria, but it raises eyebrows as to the credibility of the government. Shelter is a fundamental human right, and the French authorities understand this. Therefore, they have consistently passed home-friendly laws to reinforce easy access to accommodation. But guess what? These laws aren't as effective as you may think. Homelessness and poor living conditions are gradually becoming a French thing. As of the first quarter of 2023, France has had at least 330,000 homeless people. That is 30,000 more than the previous year and a jaw-dropping 120% increase from 2012. But it doesn't stop there, because about 4.15 million people live in poor housing conditions. This group includes people living in houses too small for them and those without basic comforts like toilets, heating, and kitchens. Even after struggling to get those substandard houses, occupants still have many unpaid bills. The most vulnerable are women and LGBT+ individuals, whom experts believe are at risk of falling into the poor housing trap. Regardless of how shabby they look, these houses are ridiculously expensive, thanks to inflation. For instance, a person's account can move from green to red from paying house rent. The gap between quality houses and shabby ones continues to widen thanks to insufficient responses from public officials. But since 2007, there's been legislation that enforces the right to housing for every French citizen and resident. It's called DALO law, or D-A-L-O law. This law requires the state to provide homes to every citizen and foreign resident. While this sounds promising on paper, the practice is far different. Politicians don't always play by the rules of their own game. Did you know that in Île-de-France, there are 10 candidates for every vacant social house? So, where did the other 9 go? Well, your guess is as good as mine. More than 2 million people wait for public housing annually, and the numbers just keep increasing. Some wait for years, unending, until they finally give up. In a country where the poverty rate is rising at an alarming speed, many applicants do not wait so long before ending up on the streets. After Emmanuel Macron was elected in 2017, the French leader promised to remove men and women from the streets. A few months later, he launched a 5-year plan to reduce homelessness. Ironically, there were 143,000 homeless people when he made this promise, but 6 years later, the figure zoomed up to 330,000. The homelessness problem has taken a new turn in the last few months. the French government is transferring homeless people in the city center to other parts of the country for the Olympics. The Olympic Games are only a few months away, and Paris needs to be decongested. Around 150 people are whisked to Marseille or Bordeaux weekly, where the French government has sent up temporary shelters. Those who wish to remain in the city were asked to prove they have a long-term work contract. This hurriedly planned relocation looks fantastic on the outside, but how long do these shelters plan to accommodate people? Some may be lucky to find a decent house and job, but others end up right back on the street. In Bordeaux, one of the host cities, people disappear from these shelters and return to Paris, where there are more opportunities. Will France reclaim its position as the strongest economy in Europe? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. We'll see you in the next one.